Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to the session of Quran for Ramadan. Today we are back with another episode and we will be discussing a passage from Surah Ma'aarij. And I'm just going to share my screen with you. So we start off with verse 23 and we'll go right up to verse 35. It goes like this. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allazina hum ala salatihim da'imun wallazina hum fi amwalihim haqqum ma'lum lis-sa'ili wal mahroom wallazina yusaddiquna biyawmiddin والذين هم من عذاب ربهم مشفقون إن عذاب ربهم غير مأمون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. But not those who pray, who are always vigilant in the prayer, who have a fixed portion in their wealth, and for those who ask and for the deprived, who truly believe in the day of judgment and keep dreading the punishment of their Lord, because the punishment of their Lord is not something to be careless of, who preserve their chastity except with their wives and slave girls, for in their matter they are not blameworthy. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم بشهاداتهم قائمون والذين هم على صلاتهم يحافظون أولئك في جنات مكرمون. But those who seek to go beyond this, then it is they who are transgressors, who keep their trusts and promises both with regard to God and with regard to their fellow human beings, who stand firm in their testimonies and who guard their prayers. It is they who will be in gardens of paradise with great honor. So once again, dear viewers, you can see that this is a very, very marvelous passage which actually exhorts us to become good human beings and to be observant in our duties towards God and also towards our fellow human beings. As you can see, the very first thing which is mentioned here is to be vigilant in the prayer. And if you note that this passage actually ends with a very similar directive, and that is to guard our prayers. So in other words, as you can see, this passage is encircled by the most important directive in religion, which is the prayer. So this passage starts off with the prayer, it ends with the prayer. It's like a wall which is encompassing all the directives of religion. And surely it does, and it is the most befittingly understood directive to be the most important one in our lives. So you see, the prayer itself is an expression of our thanksgiving to God. When we stand in the prayer, we acknowledge the fact that God, you are the greatest. We bow down to you, we prostrate before you, we hold ourselves accountable for you. And when we place the highest part of our body, which is our forehead, on the ground, we acknowledge your blessings. The blessings that have come to us from all around us, not only from all around us, but from within us. So our own faculties, our eyes, our ears, our senses, they are all something that we need to be thankful to you about. And perhaps the greatest of these blessings regarding our faculties is our eyesight. The fact that we can see is something we might take for granted, but not for those people who are maybe blind or who have gone blind. So we have to always count God's blessings, not only just by our tongue, but by expressing the fact that we pledge to share these blessings with all other people. And as you can see, this is one of the objectives for which we stand in prayer, to acknowledge God's blessings, to actually make us realize that today, wherever we are standing because of God's affection and his kindness. So a prayer itself is something which is an expression of this thanksgiving towards God. And the Quran has actually made it a point to make us realize that this is something that you have to always submit to, come what may. And that is why the word used here is da'imun, which means that this vigilance is something that takes place forever. It's not that they start off praying, they become regular and then forget it, or maybe just are not as punctual. No, this is something which is an eternal responsibility. It's going to continue with our life, and therefore this punctuality in the prayer is something that has to be observed at all cost. وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ, who have a fixed portion in their wealth for those who ask and for the deprived. لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. So if you can see, these two categories in the Quran. Sa'il is someone who asks, and al-mahroom is someone who is also deprived, but he does not ask or would not come forward with the demands or the needs that he or she would have. So again, after expressing the connection which people have with God to the prayer, the next thing which is mentioned here is that they are ones who always care about the people who are around them. The people who are around them, they are ones about whom they care, especially the underprivileged, especially those who in any way need to be looked after. And we have discussed this before, that the most important element here is that if we reach out to people who are unable to reach out to us, there are so many people who would come and ask for their needs, but there are very few people who are maybe equal in need or even more, but they don't come to you and they are not insistent in asking for what they need. And it is people who have to reach out to them. And that is why these two categories have been placed adjacent, that a Saa'il wal Mahroom, person who's going to ask, and others who are still in need, they are not going to ask. So the fixed share, which is mentioned here, obviously refers to zakat, that all of us are liable to. And I will take this opportunity to bring this to your notice, that we have to be vigilant in calculating our zakat. More often than not, we do it in a rough way. We don't make an exact calculation, although we might be giving more than the zakat which is liable to us or liable upon us, but still we should make sure that we are not falling short. So it is advised that we calculate our zakat very vigilantly and disperse it as well. And this is a obligation, this is a duty that is incumbent upon us, just as the prayer itself is. So just as the prayer connects us to God, zakat and charity and spending, it connects us to our fellow human beings. وَالَّذِينَ يُصَدِّقُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ, who truly believe in the day of judgment. So the next quality which is mentioned of the believers is that they have conviction that the hereafter is going to come. It is going to come so that we are rewarded or punished for what we have done. So a day of accountability is something that is a given, that is going to come, because this world is an imperfect world. In spite of the fact that we might pass through various judicial forms, and we might or might not get justice, and even if we get the justice that we would like to get, even then it may fall short in many ways and on many occasions. So a day of accountability has been destined. It is a day on which every single person will stand alone before the Almighty, and then he or she will be held accountable, and whatever we have done would be instrumental in whatever our fate is going to be. No one is going to help any other person. It's we that will be always standing alone for our account before the Almighty. And this day of accountability is something for which all of us know that it is going to happen. For the nations of the messengers of this world, we know that it happened in this very world, and their accountability is going to continue in the hereafter. But in the post-prophetic era in which we are living, mostly our accountability is deferred to the hereafter, in which, of course, we are going to stand before the Almighty, and then be presented with our account of deeds, and as a result of that, our fate would be decided. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ عَذَابِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ, and keep dreading, and there are people who keep dreading the punishment of their Lord. So because the fact that the punishment of their Lord is something from which they can never remain secure of, which is mentioned right in the next verse, inna azaba rabbihim ghayru ma'mun, because the punishment of their Lord is not something to be careless. In other words, the punishment is going to be administered to people who are criminals, who are wrongdoers. They are people, believers are those that they want themselves to be secure from any such fate, and they dread this fate. And in spite of being righteous, maybe in spite of the fact that they might be doing their duty, they still fear that maybe they have done something short, and they dearly hope that the punishment of God does not embrace them. So as far as God is concerned, remember, we have been given these glad tidings in the Quran that He has made us God has created human beings not to punish them, but to reward them. It is our own misfortune when we fall short and when we do deeds which are unbecoming, that we make ourselves eligible for a punishment. Otherwise, as the Quran has said elsewhere, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ لَيَجْمَعَنَّكُمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, that the Almighty has made mercy incumbent upon him so that he can take people to the day of judgment and then admit them into paradise. So, this mercy is going to manifest itself on the day of judgment, and it is our misfortune if, in spite of having so many opportunities in this world, that we are not able in any way to reach the paradise that has been destined for humankind. And remember, we've discussed this earlier as well, that paradise is a place in which it's like going to be eternal bliss. We will have whatever we want. We will have the pleasure of seeking God himself, and we might even witness him. We might be even able to observe him. And at the same time, it is something that will never vanish from us. We will always be in this place of bliss. The next thing which is mentioned here is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ فَمَنِ ابْتَغَىٰ وَرَاءَ ذَٰلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, which means that who preserve their chastity except with their wives and slave girls, for in their matter they are not blameworthy. But those who seek to go beyond this, then it is they who are transgressors. So once again, what is mentioned here is that believers are those who confine their sexual desires and sexual relations with their spouses, and they do not go out of wedlock. They do not have any extramarital relation. The only relationship which they have is between their spouses, and there's no other exception. Of course, in the times of Prophet Muhammad, we know slavery was an institution that Islam had inherited, and it gradually took measures to eradicate this inhuman institution. But because this inhuman institution was eradicated gradually, so there was a time in which slavery was allowed, it was given sanction so that it could be slowly eradicated from the society. And during this time, of course, because this was the custom of the society, relations with slave girls were allowed and permitted. But as long as this institution existed for a brief period of time in the time of Prophet Muhammad, this was a mere temporary allowance, because we have discussed this earlier that slavery was gradually eliminated, and in this transient period, slavery was allowed. So that is why this verse is something that reflects that transient period, that these are those that who do not have any relations with their wives, except their wives and their slave girls, and that is something that is a given, that they guard their chastity, they preserve their chastity, except with these two individuals or these two categories. And of course, now once slavery has been eliminated, and it was done so in the times of Prophet Muhammad, although it could not practically be done away with, but nevertheless, it is an absolute fact that today, except for spouses, there is no other way out for a person to establish his sexual needs. So, وَفَمَنِ ابْتَغَىٰ وَرَاءَ ذَٰلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. And of course, then some of the most important things which relate to our practical life are mentioned, and they include وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَأَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ, which means who keep their trusts and promises both with regard to God and with regard to their fellow human beings. So to keep one's trusts, of course, means that they honor their promises, they honor their commitments, whether these commitments and promises are understood or whether they are stated. In both cases, they fulfill these responsibilities. So remember, we have a responsibility towards God, and we have a responsibility towards our own fellow brethren. And in both cases, the obligations that we owe to them, it is that they are mentioned very clearly in this verse, which says that they are watchful about their promises, they discharge their promises, and at the same time, any trusts that they have, they hand it back to their rightful owners. And then it is said, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِشَهَادَاتِهِمْ قَائِمُونَ, who stand firm in their testimonies, referring to the fact that whenever they are called to give a testimony, whenever they are called to bear evidence, to bear witness, they always speak the truth, they side by the truth, they are never led away from the truth. And one of the most important traits of Muslims and believers is that they always speak the truth, and in no circumstances do they give false testimony, and they stand firm in their testimonies, even if this means that they are going to suffer a loss, and even if this means that their own family is going to suffer a loss, but they still withhold and they still uphold what is the truth. And finally, what is said is what we have with what we started this passage, that وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَىٰ صَلَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ, that they are the ones who protect their prayers, who guard their prayers, And about them it is said, Ulaika fi jannatin mukramun. It is they who will be in gardens of paradise with great honor. So, just as this passage started off with the prayer, it ends with the prayer, as we have just discussed earlier, signifying the importance of the prayer. Earlier on, it was said that they are punctual in their prayers, and this time it is said that they guard and protect their prayers, which means that they are not only punctual, but at the same time, they offer the prayer in a way that every part of the prayer, every component of the prayer is offered in a way that they have attention and focus before the Almighty. So with this, we come to an end to today's passage, and now we can open our forum for Q&A.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I'm still waiting for some raised hands. I do not see. Okay, Asad Mirza, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Shah. Thank you very much
Go
for
ahead.
this just beautiful sermon. My question is around, we generally we found a lot of people who around you who are punctual prayer, offering the on a very punctual way, and they are very practicing Muslims look like, but at the same time they do all the wrongdoing, especially eating the rights of the property and brothers or sisters, and they never
Right.
leave anything to earn whatever wrong way. So how can these two characters go together? Because here in this ayats, prayers is on the both sides of the all the characteristics have been described. So can you explain
So,
how these two characters go together?
yes. Actually, we've discussed this in our earlier sessions as well. The primary reason for this is our ritual centric approach, which means that we think that rituals are a means in themselves, and they are an end in themselves. They are not a means to an end. Remember, worship rituals, they are meant to make us a better person. So if we are not utilizing our prayers and our fasts and all other acts of worship en route to becoming a better person, then what we are doing is we are considering the prayer and the other worship rituals to be an objective in themselves. I mean, nothing beyond them. Whereas every single worship ritual is meant to enhance our character, to enhance us as human beings. So, because we do not relate our worship rituals to our practical life, what happens is that as soon as we finish our prayers or as soon as the month of Ramadan finishes, we are back to normal because there is no relationship between our life and our worship rituals. And this is what we call a ritual centric approach, in which when we grow up, we are taught that if a person is praying and if he is or she is dressing up in a certain way, then that is what a religious person is. So religion is confined to rituals and the way you apparently look like. And it needs to be actually, there needs to be a drastic change in the way we teach our children and the next generation what exactly religion is, and to always correlate religious rituals and worship rituals with how those rituals are going to help us in becoming better individuals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem.
Okay, thanks.
Amna Khan, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, Shehzad bhai. In relation, so after this was very informative, but how do we explain to people who are not praying and their motto in life is that we are trying to become a good person? So once we become a good person, then we will be following the ritual of praying. So I think it's a little reverse. So how do we explain to them that praying is important?
I think by giving them a very real life example, it might work. We as individuals, we have two relations. We have a vertical relation. If I live in a family, I have a vertical relation with my parents, and I have a horizontal relation with my siblings. So a person who is good to fellow human beings and does not have regard for God is like a person who is good to his siblings or her siblings and pays no attention to the parents who actually brought that person into existence. So this is like a lopsided approach that people have adopted by not thinking that we have relations on both sides, vertically to the parents and horizontally to our siblings, or in our real life, vertically towards God and horizontally towards human beings. So just as a person who is not respectful of his parents would not be considered a good person, in a very similar way, if you're not discharging the rights of God, then you have missed the bus actually, and there is something which is missing in your life. So just as you would not consider a person who has a good relationship with his parents or her parents, that he or she is falling short in some affair, because what he's doing is, or she's doing is, he or she is being good to the siblings. So your siblings are, I mean, you're very good to them, but you forget your parents. So in a similar way, when you just connect to people around you and forget God, then that is something that that should tell upon you that basically you are not realizing the fact that you are actually sacrificing a huge relationship. So that is how I think we should make them understand. And obviously, this is a very such people have a very strong presence, and to them, worship rituals at times they don't matter, and they think that this is something that God might even forgive. And there are others who think that they are not even essential. So I think that all we have to make them understand is that this is it's like a two-way relationship. If we are, if we side with one and we sacrifice the other one, then this imbalance will result.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Imad Ahmed, please अपना सवाल कर लीजिए आप.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा सवाल ये स्लेवरी के बारे में है कि जैसे ये आपका भी अकाउंट यही है, कामदी साहब भी यही कहते हैं कि ग्रेजुअली ये इस इंस्टीट्यूशन का खात्मा हो गया. क्या एविडेंस है कि ग्रेजुअली खात्मा हो गया? क्योंकि बाद में जो भी हिस्टोरिकल अकाउंट्स हम देखते हैं, मूवीज या बुक्स पढ़ते हैं, उसमें जैसे खुलाफत उस्मानिया भी आखिर तक उसमें स्लेवरी, स्लेव गर्ल्स नजर आती हैं. मैं पॉडकास्ट एक सुन रही थी तो उसमें भी यही बताया कि 1950s तक की भी अगर हम कोई फोटोग्राफिक स्टोरी देखें अरब वर्ल्ड की, तो वहाँ उस वक्त भी बाजार लगता था स्लेव्स का. तो ये क्या एविडेंस है कि ग्रेजुअली खत्म हुई या नहीं हो पाई थी?
ये देखें, ग्रेजुअली खत्म होने का ताल्लुक इस चीज से कि कुरान ने अपना काम कर दिया था और ये कहा था कि आज के बाद अब आपने कोई स्लेवरी को गवारा नहीं करना. तो देखिए, कुरान मजीद एक ऐसी चीज है कि जो आपको एक चीज बताता है, उसको फॉलो या ना करना, ना फॉलो करना, ये तो इंसानों की जिम्मेदारी है ना. तो इस वजह से अपना काम कुरान मजीद ने कह के कर दिया कि देखिए, जब नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम रुखसत हुए तो उससे कुछ पहले ये बता दिया गया कि तमाम जितने भी जी शऊर गुलाम और लौंडियां हैं जो आज़ाद होना चाहते हैं, उनके लिए आज़ादी का परवाना है. As long as they are not going to become an economic burden on the society and not do something which is immoral. तो ये अगर वो गारंटी दे देते हैं अपने ओनर्स को, तो ओनर्स को कहा गया कातिबूहुम, आप इनसे मुकातबत करें एंड सेट देम फ्री. और उससे काफी देर पहले देखिए, नए स्लेव्स बनाने की सोर्स एक ही थी और वो ये थी जंगों में. तो जो पहली बड़ी जंग हुई है मदीने में, वो जंग बदर है. तो उस जंग बदर से पहले ही ये अहकाम नाजिल हो गए थे कि अब जब जंग होगी तो आपने जो प्रिजनर्स ऑफ वॉर पकड़ने हैं, उनमें से किसी को आपने गुलाम नहीं बनाना, लॉन्डी बनाना है, आपने उनको आजाद कर देना. तो इस तरह से हुआ कि पहले मरहले में तो नए स्लेव्स बनाने का रास्ता बंद कर दिया गया और दूसरे मरहले में जो मौजूद थे उनको आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उनका खात्मा किया गया. असल में प्रॉबली जो वजह बनी है इस गलत फहमी की, वो उस तरह की दो आयतें हैं. एक जो हमने आज पढ़ी और इससे बिल्कुल मुतसिल पहले सूरह मोमिनून में आयत पाई जाती है जिसमें अल्फाज आते हैं ना कि ये वो लोग हैं कि जो अपनी शर्मगाहों की हिफाजत करते हैं सवाए अपनी बीवियों से और लौंडियों से. तो ये इससे लोगों ने शायद गलतफहमी में ये मुब्तला हो गए कि बीवियां और लौंडियां दोनों ही जायज़ हैं, जबकि अपने मौके और महल के लिहाज से ये जो आयत आई है ये उस मौके पे आई है कि जब वो ग्रेजुअल एराडिकेशन हो रही थी. तो जो कि ग्रेजुअल एराडिकेशन हो रही थी तो जाहिर है उस मौके पे तो वो स्लेवरी मौजूद थी, एक मौके पे आगे खत्म की गई है. तो नए बनाने वालों को बिल्कुल रोक दिया गया. जो बनाने वाले हैं उनको कहा गया कि आपने ग्रेजुअली खत्म करना है. लेकिन बनाने वालों को जब ये कहा गया कि जिस दौरान में ये खत्म हो रही है उस दौरान आप इन ताल्लुकात को कायम रख सकते हैं, तो ये दो आयतें जो नाजिल हुई ये गलत फहमी का गालिबन बायस बनी कि इन आयात को सियाक सबाक से हट के लोगों ने ये समझ लिया कि जैसे ये जो कहा जा रहा है ये एक हमेशा की का अलाउंस है कि आपने बीवी और अपनी लॉन्ड्री से ताल्लुक कायम करने, जबकि असल में ये इंटरम पीरियड की आयात. तो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम और कुरान ने तो अपना काम कर दिया था. ये फिर मुसलमानों की अंडरस्टैंडिंग है या मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग है जिसकी वजह से फिर वो बाद में वापस लौट आया और जैसे आपने कहा कि फिर पिछली सदी में वो जाके एग्जैक्टली खत्म हुआ.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Amna and Khan, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
So the question is related to prayers at home. More than one person, Aftari time calling. So my son usually says the azan and calls for. I mean, we all pray after him. After that, with him. So we were recently at a gathering, and he was asked about Iqamah. That do you know Iqamah? And so he got confused. I got confused, and so we want to know: is Iqamah? What is the difference between Iqamah and calling for prayer? I mean, is that something he should be learning? Calling for like a small gathering at home.
Yes, actually, for a small gathering at home, in fact, you don't need to call for azan because that is generally meant whenever you are at a public place and you'd like to focus the attention of people that the time of the prayer has arrived and now you should come and offer the prayer. So basically, it's a ritual that should be only observed in public places. When you're in a small gathering, azan itself is not required. I mean, as soon as the time of the prayer arrives, you can just start praying. Now, what Iqamah means is that it's like a short azan, in the form of short azan. There are some additional words that you have to say. Otherwise, basically, they are repetition of what the words we say in azan. And they are only meant to gather the attention of the people who are in that gathering, that now please stand on your prayer mats and we are about to begin the prayer. So actually what should have been done in these small gatherings, or should be done, is that you don't need the azan at all. All that you need is Iqamah. And Iqamah is just repeating the words of the azan with a single addition near the end, in which you say Qad qamatis salat or Qad qamatis salat, which means that the prayer is about to begin. The prayer is about to begin. So that is the right way. So don't worry about the azan. Just as soon as the time comes, you can pray, and the person who is behind the imam, he can or she can pronounce the Iqamah. And if that is something not known, then even the imam or the person who is leading the prayer can pronounce the Iqamah.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Salman Aziz, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Thank you.
सर एक्सेप्शंस तो हैं वो और कुरान में, लेकिन अमूमन जब जिक्र हुआ है बड़े गुनाहों का तो तीनों का इकट्ठे हुआ है, जैसे कत्ल, शिर्क का और फिर ये हिफ्ज़ फरूज का। तो यहाँ पे ये अकेला हुआ है, तो सर किसी काइंडली को वजह को सियाक सबाक है, एक और खास वजह?
नहीं, देखिए, यहाँ पे कानूनी बयान नहीं चल रहा। यहाँ तो अहले ईमान की सिफात हैं जो बयान हो रही हैं, और उसमें से एक बहुत बड़ी सिफत जो है वो हया है। तो हया जो एक बहुत बड़ी सिफत है, उसका ताल्लुक इस चीज़ से है कि आप कितने ज़्यादा, जब आपकी शादी हो जाए, जब आप मैरिड लाइफ में दाखिल हो जाएं, तो आपकी जो जज्बात हैं और आपकी जो ख्वाहिशात हैं, वो शादी से बाहर किसी तरफ माइल नहीं होने चाहिए। तो यहाँ अहले ईमान की सिफात बयान हो रही है, और ये भी जहन में रखिएगा कि ये कोई एक एग्जॉस्टिव लिस्ट नहीं होती। यानी कुरान मजीद में जगह जगह पे देयर आर पैसेजेस इनमें सिफात बयान हो रही होती हैं। तो वो बेसिकली जिस सूरा की जो थीम होती है उसके लिहाज से वो सिफात बयान हो रही होती हैं। किसी एक जगह पे इट वुड बी रॉन्ग टू अस्यूम कि भाई ये कोई एग्जॉस्टिव लिस्ट है। तो आप देखिए मुख्तलिफ जगहों पे मुख्तलिफ एलिमेंट्स हैं जो कि बयान किए गए हैं, एंड दे आर more in line with the context and the occasion of that surah.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabana, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
جی السلام علیکم جی میرا کویسچن نماز کے بارے میں ہے کہ جیسے میں اور میری 2 بیٹیاں ہم نماز پڑھتے ہیں گھر میں، تو انفرادی نماز پڑھنا بہتر ہے یا ہم تینوں جماعت میں نماز پڑھا کریں؟
نہیں، آپ جماعت میں نماز پڑھیں، یہ تو بہت اچھا ہے۔ آپ میں سے کوئی ایک نماز لیڈ کر سکتے ہیں اور پیچھے کھڑے ہو جائیں باقی لوگ۔
اس سے پہلے میرے نالج میں نہیں تھا۔ تھینک یو سو مچ۔
Thank you so much. Imran Khan, please unmute your mic and ask your question. And if I could request for people to keep their questions short, thank you.
السلام علیکم سر، مائی کوشچن pertain to this آیا ہمارے ملک میں آپ دیکھیں لاکھوں لوگ حج پہ بھی جا رہے ہیں اور تبلیغی اجتماعات بھی ہو رہے ہیں، سب کچھ ہو رہا ہے، بٹ جب معاملات کی بات آتی ہے تو ہمیں ڈھونڈنے سے بھی ایماندار اور آنےسٹ اور سچا آدمی بندہ نہیں ملتا۔ آپ کوئی کام کرنے چلیں، کوئی کانٹریکٹ کرنے چلیں، کوئی کاروبار کرنے چلیں، یو ڈونٹ فائنڈ این آنےسٹ پرسن۔ تو کیا ہم قرآن کو صحیح طرح پڑھ نہیں رہے؟ ہم روایتی اور پیدائشی مسلمان بن چکے ہیں؟ شکریہ۔
نہیں، وہ دیکھیں آپ کے سوال کی طرح کا ایک بالکل سملر سوال جو شروع میں کیا گیا وہی ہے کہ دیکھیے ہم نے مذہب کو عبادات کا مجموعہ سمجھ لیا، ریچولز کو آفر کرنے کا ایک پیکج سمجھ لیا کہ مذہبی آدمی وہ ہے کہ جو نماز روزے کے بارے میں آبزرونٹ ہو۔ یہ بات کہ اصل میں بنیادی طور پہ مذہبی آدمی وہ ہے جس کا کیریکٹر اچھا ہو، جس کا اخلاق اچھا ہو، یہ کبھی بھی ہمیں ٹارگٹ کے طور پہ نہ سکھایا جاتا ہے نہ بتایا جاتا ہے۔ شروع ہی سے جس چیز پہ زور دیا جاتا ہے وہ نماز روزے پہ اور اپیرنس پہ ہے۔ تو یہ اصل میں وہ سکھانے کی اپروچ کا فلا ہے، جس کے نتیجے میں جو لوگ پیدا ہوتے ہیں ان کے اندر کردار و اخلاق کی بلندی ہوتی نہیں ہے، اور اگر وہ مذہبی ہوتے بھی ہیں تو سراسر ان کی جو مذہبیت ہے وہ نماز روزے تک محدود رہ جاتی ہے۔ تو یہ اصل میں ایک بہت بڑا انقلاب چاہتی ہے تعلیم کے میں جو ہمارا ذریعہ ہے کہ ہم کیسے مذہب کو سکھائیں۔ مذہب کو سکھانے کا طریقہ یہ ہے کہ وہ بتائیں کہ مذہب کے اندر عبادات جو ہیں وہ اچھا انسان پیدا کرنے کا ذریعہ ہیں۔ آنےسٹی اگر کریٹ نہیں ہو رہی آپ کے اندر، اس کا مطلب ہے کہ عبادات آر فالنگ شارٹ، آپ نے عبادات کو ریلیٹ نہیں کیا اپنے اخلاق کے ساتھ۔ تو جب تک یہ ہم اپروچ اختیار نہیں کریں گے کہ عبادات کو ہم معاملات اور اخلاقیات سے ریلیٹ نہیں کریں اپنے بچوں میں اور خود اس کا نمونہ نہ بن جائیں، اس وقت تک ہم ایسے ہی ڈیفیکٹیو لوگ پروڈیوس کریں گے کہ جن کا اصل کام یہ ہوگا کہ وہ تمام دنیا کی برائیاں کریں اور سال کے آخر میں یا عمرہ کر لیں یا حج کر لیں اور یہ سوچ لیں کہ وہ دوبارہ پیدا ہوئے ہیں اور اب ان کا میٹر زیرو ہو گیا۔
Talat Waheed, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
جی سر، السلام علیکم، شکریہ غزل. سر میرا سوال نماز سے تعلق رکھتا ہے. ایک تو یہ ذہن میں سوال ہے میرے کہ اللہ سے جو تعلق عورت اور مرد کا ہے وہ بندے کا تعلق ہے. تو مجھے اس کی دلیل کہیں نہیں ملتی، بس ایک ٹریڈیشن چل رہا ہے. مجھے اس سے کوئی اعتراض بھی نہیں ہے کہ میں سر پہ دوپٹہ اوڑھوں. تو مرد لوگ سر پہ نہیں کور کرتے ہیں تو اللہ کے سامنے کھڑے ہو جاتے ہیں. تو میں اگر سر پہ کور نہیں کر کے اللہ کے سامنے کھڑے ہوں تو کیا 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 فرق ہے ان دونوں میں؟
کوئی فرق نہیں ہے. اگر مردوں کے سر کور کرنا تو ایک کلچرل چیز رہی ہے، اور وہ اس وقت بھی کلچرل تھی، اب بھی کلچرل ہے. خواتین کا جو سر کور کرنا ہے وہ بھی ایک آداب کی چیز ہے، اور یہ کہا جاتا ہے کہ اب اللہ کے حضور اگر آئیں تو اپنا سر ڈھانک کے آئیں. لیکن یہ آداب کی چیز ہے. اور جی آداب کی چیز ہے. جیسے آپ کسی بزرگ ہستی کے سامنے آتے ہیں تو آپ اس طرح سے آتے ہیں. تو اس کلچر کو یا یوں سمجھ لیجیے کہ اس ٹریڈیشن کو اپہولڈ کیا گیا ہے. تو نماز میں خواتین کے لیے کہا گیا ہے کہ آپ اپنے سر کو ڈھانک کے آئیں، کہ آپ اللہ تعالیٰ کے حضور آ رہے ہیں. تو یہ ایک آداب ہیں جو بتائے گئے ہیں، تو ان آداب کا لحاظ کرنا چاہیے.
Dr. Saleem, I have a couple of more questions. Can I take them?
جی پلیز گو ہیڈ.
Sadia, please ask your question now. Sadia Saeed, if you're there, please ask your
جی
question.
السلام علیکم. جی میرا سوال ڈاکٹر صاحب کل کے اس سے تھا. میں صرف ایک چھوٹا سا سوال یہ جاننا چاہ رہی تھی. مجھے شروع سے بچپن سے بتایا گیا تھا کہ آپ تہجد جب پڑھتے ہیں تو آپ رات میں سونا ضروری ہے، پھر سو کے اٹھ کے آپ تہجد پڑھ سکتے ہیں. تو از دیٹ ٹرو کہ نیند کرنی ضروری ہے پھر آپ اٹھ کے نماز پڑھیں تہجد کی؟
جی آئیڈیلی تو ایسا ہی ہے، چونکہ جو ورڈ تہجد ہے عربی میں اس کا مطلب ہے نیند توڑ کے اٹھنا. تو یہ نماز اصلاً تو ایسی ہی ہے کہ آپ نیند توڑ کے اٹھیں، کیونکہ ظاہر ہے اسی میں ایفرٹ لگتا ہے اور اسی وجہ سے اس کا اجر بھی زیادہ ہے. لیکن اس کا ایک جو سیکنڈ بیسٹ فارم یا یوں سمجھ لیجیے ایک سلائٹلی لیسر ہے، وہ یہ ہے کہ اگر آپ کو محسوس ہو کہ نیند توڑ کے اٹھا نہیں جائے گا یا وہ رہ ہی جائے گی، تو آپ اول وقت میں پڑھ سکتے ہیں. جس کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ مڈ نائٹ کراس کر جائیں تو اس کے فوراً بعد تہجد کا ٹائم شروع ہو جاتا ہے. تو اگر آپ اس وقت جاگ رہے ہوں تو آپ سونے سے پہلے پڑھ لیجیے.
ٹھیک ہے، صحیح. تھینک یو سو مچ.
Omar, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Keep it short.
Assalamu
Thank you.
alaikum, sir. Is
Walaikum
overthinking like being unthankful when done out of choice?
دیکھیں، اوور تھنکنگ از اے سائیکولوجیکل اور ایون اے پیراسائیکولوجیکل ایشو ایٹ ٹائمز. اس کا مذہب سے کوئی تعلق نہیں ہے. I mean, as a person who is going to give an opinion regarding religion, I don't find overthinking has anything to do with religion. It's a way of life, it's an attitude. جس طرح کچھ لوگ انڈر تھنک کرتے ہیں، کچھ لوگ اوور تھنک کرتے ہیں، کچھ لوگ یعنی they have different dispositions. تو یہ انسان کی طبیعت کی ایک یوں سمجھ لیجیے کہ ایک ایکسپریشن ہے. تو لیکن مذہب سے ہٹ کے اگر آپ کے سوال نارملی کسی سے بھی پوچھیں گے تو ہم یہی کہیں گے کہ ہاں جی اوور تھنک نہیں کرنا چاہیے آپ کو. اور جہاں تک آپ کی پرواز ہے آپ کی امیجنیشن کی، اس کے گھوڑے نہ دوڑائیں اور ایک ایسی جگہ پہ رہیں کہ جو نارمل سی کی جگہ ہوتی ہے. لیکن اس کا تعلق مذہب سے نہیں ہے، یہ کامن سینس کی چیز ہے.
تھینک یو ڈاکٹر سلیم. عرفہ اقبال اپنا سوال کر لیجیے آپ.
جی السلام علیکم.
وعلیکم السلام.
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب, I have a question on the abolishment of slavery. I just need some reference for my personal study کہ جس طرح alcohol پہ اللہ سبحانہ تعالیٰ نے gradually we can find the ayats جس میں gradual حکم آ رہا ہے کہ ابھی پیچھے ہو جاؤ، ابھی نماز نہیں پڑھو. تو regarding slavery I do understand it might not be at the top of your head. اگر آپ مجھے کوئی لیکچر بتا دیں.
ہاں نہیں، وہ اٹس ناٹ اے کوسچن آف بینگ ایٹ دا ٹاپ آف مائی ہیڈ. اصل چیز یہ ہے کہ اٹ ول ریکوائر ٹائم ٹو سائٹ آل دوز ورسز. اس میں آپ کو یہ بسما جو ہیں شیل گیو یو اے لنک جس میں یہ سب ورسز جو ہیں یو ول فائنڈ دیم اپروپریٹلی مینشنڈ اینڈ آلسو ریفرنسڈ.
Thank you. I will do that. Dr. Saleem, I have a short question. Some verses in the Quran refer to angels descending to tell us that do not grieve and we will go to heaven. So in reference to that, will we be told at the moment of death that whether we will be going to heaven or hell, or will that not be or will be on the way of life?
This is an indication that is found at various I would say passages of the Quran, that at the time of death when angels claim our soul, we will get to know our ultimate destination, especially the people who are going to heaven. So this is an indication that we find in several verses in the Quran.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Thank you for a wonderful session, for your wisdom, and inshallah we'll see everybody tomorrow. We're all out of time now. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz.